Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It is June the 26th. We are halfway through the year, and time is just rattling on, isn't it, at a frantic pace. It does seem that the older I get, time seems to move faster. I don't know how that works, but it seems to. Maybe that's just because we get busier as we get older, but it certainly seems much quicker. In fact, Benjamin Franklin once said, "Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for time is the stuff that life is made of." I want to talk about time today, and in particular, I want to talk about how we manage our time and how we use it, and share some tips and some tricks that can help us to manage our time a little better. We all know we've got 168 hours in any given week. We've always had that, always will do. And in this information age, we know so much about time, and yet, in spite of our understanding of its value, so much time seems to get wasted each week, doesn't it? It does, in fact, get squandered far too much. If I was to ask you, what is time? Could you answer the question? Would you be able to give me a definition of what time is? We know what it is if no one asks us. We live our lives by it, but if we're to ask for a definition, it can actually be something quite complicated to define. Albert Einstein gave a definition. He said, "Time has no independent existence apart from the order of events by which we measure it." There was a German mathematician back in the 1700s who once said that time is merely the order of events. It's not an entity in itself. If we look at Webster's dictionary, that gives a further definition where it says time is a continuum in which events succeed one another from past through to present into the future. If you were to take those three examples, those three definitions, there is something that stands out as being in common with each of those definitions, and that is, at the very core or essence of time, the basic element is events. So, what is an event? An event, I think, is, in really simple terms, it's just a happening, isn't it? It's an occurrence of something. It can be large or small, complex or simple, but an event is really just something that happens. So if we are to take this subject of time management and discuss this today, what we're looking at really is what can we do to take control, which is another word for management, to take control of the events in our lives. That's what time management is all about, isn't it? How can I take better control of the events in my lives? There are certain things we can't control, and there is plenty of stress that people develop when they try to control things that are outside of their control. We can't change the weather. I wouldn't want to right now. The weather here in England is remarkably fantastic. It's a rare occurrence. We can't change things if we're in a traffic jam. How many times have we been late and gotten stressed because the traffic is bumper to bumper? We can't change that. We can't change other people's decisions, their choices. We can influence, but we can't control. And that can cause us frustration sometimes, can't it? Especially in this people-centered business, when we're building a team, building a network, or finding new customers that we can share, we can invite, we can persuade, we can cajole, but we can't control. And it's important for us to recognize that and learn to let go of the things we can't control and focus on the things that we can. So one of the things that I love about time management is a couple of reasons why I wanted to talk about it today. One, yes, I want to share some tips as to what we can do better in managing our time and working towards achieving our goals, but also in helping us recognize the relationship between effective time management and positive self-esteem. There is a direct parallel. You may not have seen this before, you may not have considered it, but it's really, really true. If you look at times, for example, where you are feeling really good about yourself, they're typically times where you're also very productive. If you look at times where you're feeling down in the dumps, discouraged, despairing, you'll typically find that you are not so productive in those moments. there is in fact a relationship. The more we seek and obtain control, the more productive we become. And the more productive we become, the more confident we become, and the more self-esteem we develop as a result. There is in fact a direct parallel between the two. And so interestingly, and I think this is what makes Nikken so wonderful, is as by nature of the fact that we are entrepreneurs, this entrepreneurial endeavor in Nikken requires us to deliberately go out and take control of the circumstances in our lives. It deliberately requires us to take some risks, not some big risks. We risk some time. We perhaps risk a little bit of reputation when we talk to people and they may say yes or no. We may fear what might come from that, but that's not a big risk. But there is some risk involved in learning some new skills, putting ourselves out there, taking some time out of our schedule, and then trying something new. But the consequence of that, when we take control of that opportunity and when we lead forward with it, is over time, when we start to get those meaningful results, we can see our self-esteem and our confidence start to grow. Now, of course, we need to get the results in order to see the confidence grow, right? If we're not getting the results, then we might feel a bit frustrated and end up feeling the opposite. So let's talk about how to get the results through better use of our time. I want to start by eliminating some of the potential naysayers that may be listening, that say, I don't need to plan. Planning, time management, maybe that's a dated concept. Maybe I'm too busy to plan. Maybe it's not very effective. It hasn't worked for me. I want to go through some of the typical complaints or doubts that people may have when it comes to the efficacy of planning their time. One is, of course, like I said, I already know what I have to do. So why do I need to take the time to plan? Well, there's always routine activity each day that requires our attention. And if we're not careful, that can get the better of us. And we can find that the most important things, our life's mission, our life's purpose, is getting a little neglected. If we aren't taking the time, if we do feel like we know what we're doing and we don't therefore need to plan, we probably are asking the wrong questions of ourselves when it comes to managing our time. Or even worse, we're not asking enough questions on the most important things. Because at the heart of this, yes, we've got things that we need to do each and every day. Very easy to write up a task list. I need to do a little bit of shopping. I need to visit such and such a person. I don't forget to call so-and-so. Don't forget to take the grandchild out this afternoon for this and that. These types of things can pop in. And we can quickly manage our time that way. But if we're not careful, time will escape and get the better of us. And if we're not focused on our life's mission and purpose, then we can find we're filling our time with stuff and dangerously giving the trivial an equal portion of our time as the most important things, giving it what I perhaps call the same emotional purchasing power. And we don't want to do that because not all tasks are created equal, right? We need to make sure we know what's most important. So if we know what we're doing and we don't need to plan, we probably haven't figured out really what's most important yet. Problem number 2, planning doesn't work for me. I have too many interruptions. I think all of us can relate to that one. We have a world nowadays that we live in where we're getting interrupted on a daily basis. So we want to make sure that we understand distractions are a part of life. They will be a part of a daily routine. But as the saying goes, don't let the things that matter most be at the mercy of the things that matter least. Let's make sure that we get a balance. Acknowledge the interruptions, anticipate them, be real with that context, but learn to respond appropriately to them. Give them their appropriate portion of time, which may be limited or not at all. Learn how to respond to them. Number 3, I feel too tied down when I have to make a long list of things to do. If you're a creative, enthusiastic entrepreneur, the thought of writing a task list may seem particularly burdensome. It may seem very restrictive. But what I would suggest is rather than focus on writing a long list, focus on writing a meaningful one. there is in fact a difference. And of course, remember that you're in charge of the list, not the other way around. We are the ones that write it, so we're the ones in charge. So we shouldn't feel restricted by something that we're in control of. And like I said, replace a long list with a meaningful one, and all of a sudden that can be a wonderful expression of creativity if you need that. Challenge number four, I don't have time to plan. Again, I think that's a common one. There was a study done a while ago of senior level executives in the workplace where 72% of those research surveyed came back saying they didn't feel they had time to plan. They're in busy corporate positions, yet they're saying they don't have the time to plan. I totally relate to that. When I was in the office, you'd be traveling here, there, and everywhere. You're getting 50, 60, 70 emails a day. And we're not talking spam. We're talking, please read this report and sign off on it. Please give us your insight on this aspect of our marketing strategy. Please, can we attend this meeting, or please review the minutes of this meeting? You got all of this that requires not just a quick glance, but a meaningful response and commitment of your time. So it's very easy to feel like we don't have time. But what I would suggest is if we don't feel we've got time to plan, we need to understand that if we feel that way, that we are in fact giving that time to something else. And that something else is what we would consider more important. So if we're not finding the time to plan, what we're perhaps telling ourselves is that we're not valuing the activity enough. Yeah. Because we'll always do what we consider is most important to us. It's not always what's best. We might throw ourselves on the couch at the end of the night. In that moment, that might be what's most important to me because I'm tired. But it's not necessarily what's best. Yeah. But we need to learn to differentiate, do the difference. And the last challenge that many people face, I just don't know how to do it. And maybe some people trick themselves into thinking, because I write the occasional task list, I know what it means to plan. Maybe I've set a goal. Maybe I've been to HBM and I've got my vision board. I know what my life needs to look like. I've got my long-term goals. Therefore, I know because I've made a lifetime plan. Maybe that's just a vision board and we haven't put it in context of daily activities that will take us from where we are now to where we want to be. So what I want to do with the rest of the time here today is go through 6 steps that can help us to improve our time management skills, the ways that we can take better control of the events in our life and turn them to our good as we build our businesses. Why? As we do this, we're going to get better results. I like to think of it this way. Some people say you can't predict the future. What is time management? It is, in fact, predicating or predicting future events. We're saying this is going to happen in the future, and I'm going to build a constructive, meaningful plan to see it come to pass. We are predetermining future events in our lives. If you put that in the context of your life mission, goals, and objectives, your dreams, your fantasies, your aspirations, if you put it into that context and go, I'm going to take all of my aspirations of the future and I'm going to pull them into the present and make them a predetermined reality by making a concrete plan of action to control my choices now and lead my path towards them, then yes, you can start to predict the future. I find that overwhelmingly exciting when we look at what we want to become in life, what we want to achieve, what we can get. So let's look at the 6 things we can do to make sure that we get better at doing that. First, find a place that is relatively free from distractions. Planning time is thinking time. I think that's really important. Planning time is thinking time. We've got all this talk nowadays of mindfulness, haven't we? Where we've got such a busy rush of life, this whirlwind of the day job that I've often referred to it as, all of this complexity of modern technology demanding so much, all of these demands left, right, and center, with all the different hats we wear and all the different balls we juggle, that we just need time for ourselves to think and breathe. And if we do that and put that into a planning context, we can just start to feel a little bit more sense of control of our day, and eventually that leads into of our life. Yeah. So take some time. I would suggest that this requires finding or identifying a particular time of day where that will work best. That may be a few minutes before your working day begins. It may be, in my case, perhaps a few minutes before the kids get up in the morning. If you're not a morning person, like I have become through countless sleepless nights, or interrupted sleep, I should say, with lots of little kids. If you're not a morning person, then maybe it's at the end of the day as you prepare for the next day. Yeah. But identify what time of day works best for you. Find a few minutes where you can have some quiet, uninterrupted time, where you can have time to think and time to plan. Step number 2, review your long-term objectives. This helps us avoid getting caught up in the trivial, which can always, of course, take us off course so easily. So take time each day to think, what specific tasks can I do today that will bring me closer to my goals? I really think that's important, that we focus, when we are reviewing our daily activities, how they relate to our long-term goals and objectives. And of course, they should be centered in our life's mission or purpose or cause that gives us fulfillment and purpose and a sense of wonder and appreciation for life and everything that we're doing. We've got to see that connection feed through into our daily activities so that we enjoy the journey, not just the destination, because it really is, at the end of the day, all about the journey, isn't it? So review, step number 2, what your long-term objectives are. Point number 3, make sure that the number of tasks and the amount of time required by each is well within the available time that you have each day. Now, this is an important one because as people jump into time management as newbies to this activity, they might get over-enthusiastic and then suddenly find that they over-plan. And if you over-plan and over-commit your time, the consequence of that is you don't achieve everything you set out to do. You then get frustrated. You then throw your hands up in the air and say, this doesn't work. And you give up and you try something far less effective, which may be not planning at all. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we understand and have a realistic grasp of the time that is required for each task that we're planning, and build into that a buffer. I would always encourage you to add into it contingencies, buffers, an extra amount of time for the anticipated interruptions, or for maybe some of those unexpected challenges that might come with it as we apply ourselves to the task. So point number 4, set specific daily goals. It's been said that when we deal in ambiguity, we rarely have success. But when we deal with specifics, we'll rarely have a failure. So please get specific in identifying your key daily activities. Make it clear, make it specific. The more clear, the better. Okay? And again, especially if we're bridging them and linking them to our long-term goals. We've got to be able to see how this will get me to here. And we've got to see, it's like a ladder. And each daily activity is like a rung on the ladder that's going to get me closer and closer to where I want to get. So let's make sure that we can see the relatedness there. Point number 5, I think, again, is a really important one. We want to eliminate naivety in our time management skills and anticipate obstacles. Now, I'm not suggesting that we start out with a negative mindset and say, I'm going to make all these calls and people are going to say no. I'm going to set up these appointments and people are going to hang up, or they're going to cancel on me. Well, I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is we've got to anticipate reality, that there will be things that will get in the way. We need to prepare for them. We need to anticipate them. And the more we can anticipate and maybe have some contingency plans or be mindful of these obstacles or interruptions, the better we can be prepared to know how to respond to them. Sometimes we get distracted, not simply because we've been distracted, but because we don't know how to respond to the distractions when they come. Yeah? Maybe you're in the middle of writing some great copy for a blog post that you're writing or for a presentation that you're working on, and you're in the throes of that creative zone, And just as that you're in the flow, you get a phone call. Do you answer the phone call and let that person who is actually just ringing up, just wanting to have a chat and see if you're just how you're doing and talk about the weather? Do you allow that to break the flow? Or do you say, so glad you called, can we arrange a better time to speak because I'm really in the zone right now? Yeah, I think it's really important that we recognize what the anticipated challenges could be and then understand how we should respond to stay in control of our time. I'm just going to quote what Louise has said here. People overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a lifetime. I really love that, Louise. So true, isn't it? So true. Absolutely. So anticipate the obstacles. The final step, which I think is, again, one of the most important, is to prioritize your tasks. Like I said, failing to prioritize leaves our task list up to the emotional temperature of the moment to determine what gets done and when. And like I said, we don't want to treat our priorities and our trivial tasks with the same balance and currency as each other. They aren't equal. A lady called Stephanie Wilson once said, since not all tasks are created equal, the organized executive, and I would add to that, entrepreneur, must set priorities. That is, establish a hierarchy of importance and match the commitment of time and resources to the relative importance of each task. So I think that's important. Do we balance our time and our resources proportionately to the importance of the task? Or do we not? Yeah. How much time do we dedicate and devote to procrastinating, to shuffling papers, to contemplating, to thinking about getting things done versus going out there and getting it done? Yeah, far too much. Far too much. Now, with this being said, I want you to think about, what do you currently do now in regards to planning your days, your weeks, or your months? Do you have monthly goals as to how many people you want recruited in your business? Do you have weekly targets as to how many presentations should be conducted in order to achieve that recruiting goal? Do you have daily targets of how many people you should be speaking to each and every day in order to get the commitments to hear a presentation in order to achieve your weekly target and thus your monthly goal? You see how they all connect and feed into each other? If we don't have the monthly goal, we probably won't have the weekly or daily activities mapped out. And then what we'll find is we're meandering along life's highway, fulfilling someone else's objectives or mission plan or no plan at all, and then we'll end up wondering why nothing's happening in our business. It really is down to us to take control and manage it, manage the events, and do it well. Now, how do we therefore prioritize our time? I want to give you 3 words which I think really help us to define what our priorities are. These words are must, should, and could. So as you're looking at the things that need to get done, I want you to prioritize in order of importance this way. What things must get done in order for me to achieve my goal? You start with the must-haves first. After you've done all the must-haves in the day, you then move on to all the things that should be done. And once you've done all the things that should be done, after the things that must be done, once you've done them, whatever available time you have left, you focus on what could be done. And those 3 words can really help us define what matters most. Now, that can help us in establishing priorities, but I'd like to emphasize as well that as we identify what matters most, and as we put that first, it's not always the most exciting things. Often, the most important, the things that must be done, are often the mundane, the monotonous. It's picking up the phone and making the phone calls. It's doing the follow-up. It's extending the invitations. It's updating your Facebook page account for your customer groups and things like that. It's doing the follow-up with your customers. It's making sure that the invitations have gone out for the meeting that's coming next month. It's those types of things. That might seem mundane and monotonous, but it's actually some of the most important stuff. The least important stuff is often the most pleasurable, but it's also the least rewarding. Maybe I just need to shuffle my cards here and make sure I alphabetize my contact list. Yeah, that could be done, but it mustn't be done in order to get your priorities in order. So must, should, and could. 3 great words that can help us identify how to prioritize our tasks in order to do the things that matter most first. I was chatting with Kim this morning, and she said we need to make sure that we don't get caught up in the thick of thin things. I really like that. We need to make sure that we don't get caught up in the thick of thin things. With all of this reality TV, with all of this social media superficiality that exists, if we devote too much time to that type of entertainment, using social media as an entertainment versus a business tool, for example, the governing principles that override these kind of entertainment environments can start to seep into our lives, and then by osmosis, we adapt that way of thinking in the way that we prioritize our time and how we cherish what matters most. So what can we do? If we put first things first, if we make the most important things our priority, what will start to happen is the less important, the trivial stuff will find its proper place and eventually will slip out of our agenda altogether. I love that. And then you'll find yourself in a unique position where people will come to you and say, how do you get so much done? You're getting so many things accomplished. How do you do all of this? Because they're trying to balance the important and the trivial all at the same time. Yeah? They're trying to do everything at once, and you just can't. And the answer will be quite simple. I make sure that I do the things that matter most first, and all the trivial stuff I let go. And when you do that, what tends to happen is it gives room for more of the most important stuff to be accommodated in your life. We don't need to make sacrifices on the most important stuff because we give them scope and room to breathe in our calendars. So I hope this has been helpful today. I would invite each of you to look at what must be done in your business to get that next rank advancement, to get that qualification up, to achieve that sales target or that objective that you've got, to become who you want to become, to achieve your lifelong goals and mission with Nikan. What needs to be done? What must be done? Focus on that, write it down, prioritize it. All the stuff that could be done, save for later. Do the things that matter most. Don't let the things that matter most be at the mercy of the things that matter least. I want you to know as you prioritize your time, you'll get so much out of it. You'll accomplish so much. I know this from personal experience. When I was president of Nikan, I certainly didn't tell Kurt at the time when he hired me. I was doing a degree as well. I'd started that when I joined Nikan. I did it not for business opportunities. I did it because I love learning and I wanted to do something. And it was something I needed to prove to myself because I didn't have the chance when I was younger, and I knew I could do it. So in spite of the fact that when I joined Nikan, I was sales director, during that time that I got my degree, I went from sales director to managing director, international move to global president. I went from having 5 children to 6 and to 7, moved back from California back to England. I had an operation that prevented me from sitting down for 2 weeks. It was very uncomfortable. During all this time, I didn't submit one paper late. Everything was handed in on time. There wasn't a single meeting that I missed with work. There wasn't a single assignment handed in late. And there wasn't an opportunity with my children that I neglected. I didn't see much TV during that time, but that wasn't important. That's the could-do stuff, not the must-have stuff. I got so much accomplished. I learned so much. I grew so much in that time frame, perhaps more than any other time in my life. It was fantastic. But I was putting all the most important things first, and as a result, abundance flowed into my life. Opportunity soared. Learning just expanded and wisdom was developed in ways that I hadn't experienced. So I encourage you, it's worth every effort. It's worth the sacrifice. You will get the results and it will be worth the price. We have to want the consequences of what we want, which means if we want to be financially successful in business, we must want to also work hard and get out of our comfort zone and be a little uncomfortable in order to achieve that. That's the price that we pay. We have to want the consequence of what we want. So thank you very much. Pay good attention to what your priorities are. Make some good goals. Write it down. Use those 6 steps. And I promise you, you'll get better results. Thanks very much, and we'll speak next week. Take care.